go. So welcome everybody. I'm Catherine Stothart. I'm the host for today from the BAPT board, and I'm really pleased to introduce Anne Bulstrode and Susan Geary, who are going to talk about temperament and the evolution of temperament. I love the temperament lens of type, so I'm really excited to be here and to be part of this. And I haven't heard Susan and Anne speak before. I think it's about 5 years since they last spoke at a BAPT conference, so I'm very pleased to welcome them back to be speaking today. I know they've got a lot of content to get through. There's polls and all sorts of things. So if there are any questions, if you could keep the questions to the end, I think, please, or put them in chat, and I'll try and keep my eyes on chat. So over to you, Anne.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to pass you over to Susan.
Okay, and thank you, Anne. And so welcome to the Evolution of Temperament, and we're very happy to be here with you today. But first, let's introduce ourselves. So yes, I'm Susan Geary, the first one, and Anne Bulstrode is the next one there. And we are basically leadership management, interpersonal communications, and wellness learning coaches. We are master personality dimensions trainers. So that means we can train trainers in this temperament personality dimensions. So we've had 20 plus years working with psychological theory, and we are certified to deliver many other assessments, including the MBTI. And we have both MBTI trained for, I think, about 20 years, and we just love the MBTI. So we are the authors of 2 books about how to make use of aspects of personality dimensions. When I say authors, the other one, we were rushing to get it published for this, and it's still in just the final tweaking, so it'll be coming out in May. And we've also developed 3 of the personality dimensions reports. So I hope that's enough about us, and Anne will now go over the roadmap.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Yeah, so we've been through our introduction, and we've got, as Catherine mentioned, we've got quite a bit to cover in this hour, so we are going to keep it moving. We're going to start off by giving you a little bit of the evolution of temperament. We'll talk, and we won't be spending a lot of time on this, but we'll talk about the early history, what happened during the 20th century, and what's been happening in the 21st century. From there, we're going to actually move into wellness, and that's an area we've been working a lot in since COVID, connecting wellness and temperament. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about what wellness is, the wellness wheel that we use, and how temperament plays into that wellness wheel. And then we're also going to take you through a couple of activities, which we hope you'll enjoy. And we're going to finish off with a special offer for you. So I'm going to pass you back to Susan, who is going to, oh no, sorry, before I pass you back to Susan, we're going to do our first poll. So Catherine, if you wouldn't mind, we just want to get an idea of your knowledge of temperament. I know all of you are probably MBTI, but we just want to make sure everybody has some knowledge of temperament. Okay, so it looks as though everybody has at least some. A couple of you little to no knowledge, but that's okay. We will be talking about, when we start getting into the personality dimension colors, we will actually be getting into how they relate to the MBTI letters.
I'm just sharing the results there, Anne, if that's
okay.
all right.
Thank you. That'd be great. Yep. So
okay.
As I say, it looks like most of you do have, some of you are expert, which is wonderful, and most of you have at least some, and then a couple of you who aren't yet. So that's okay. We'll make sure that you have an understanding of where we're going as we go. Okay. If you want to take the poll down now, that'd be great.
I have taken it down. If it's still on your screen, you might need to close it yourself.
Yeah, just close it. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to now send you over to Susan, who's going to talk a little bit about 20th century. So hold on a second, because I'm working off of 2 screens here. And she's going to talk about the early history with you.
Okay, and as Anne said, we don't want to get you bogged down in the early history, so we thought we'd just pick up on some of the key things. And what's fascinating to Anne and I is the concept of temperament itself has a long history, going back 2,500 years to the Greeks and Romans. And it was Hippocrates who claimed that illness was due to an imbalance of the 4 fluids or humors, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile, and blood. And he believed that the cure for illness was to actually balance these body fluids. Now, go ahead a while, and we thought we'd like to mention the physician Galen. He also believed that illness was due to an imbalance of the four humors. However, he went a little bit further and linked the excess of a particular humor to specific behavioral traits and mental dispositions, which he referred to as temperaments. So the first use of temperaments. And the Latin meaning of temperament actually just means a proper mixture, which is a very important concept in temperament. He named the four temperaments phlegmatic for phlegm, melancholic for black bile, choleric for yellow bile, and sanguine for blood. And he did assign each behavioral characteristics. So phlegmatics, he said, were lazy, sleepy, and languid. Melancholic, he said, were fearful, depressed, and discontent. Cholerics, he said, were impetuous, deceitful, extravagant, and bold. And sanguines were merry, sociable, and volatile. Now, there were people who sort of focused on the concepts of temperaments in the next few centuries, but we thought we'd just jump to Adiches in 1905. And he reflected on the work of Immanuel Kant, who had started to develop four psychological temperaments. He introduced the concept that people could be characterized by their dominant worldview, and the four worldviews he proposed were skepticals, who need to understand the reason or rationale behind everything, getting a little close to the greens, traditionals, who prefer the world to remain stable and predictable, a little bit more like the goat that we'll talk about, doctrinaires, who sought doctrines that were of value to mankind in many ways, a little closer to the blue, and innovatives who like to change things and seek new ways. Sounds very much like what we would call orange. So I'm now going to pass you to Anne, who will look at more up-to-date theories and start with the 20th century.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, so in the second half of the 20th century, several applied practitioners added to our knowledge of the temperament theory. In the late 40s, David Geary completed his master's and doctoral degrees in psychology. Through his research, he became intrigued with what he perceived to be the long lineage of ideas that human personalities could be categorized into four types or temperaments. He continued to refine his theory through the 50s and 60s while he was working as an educational psychologist. And in 1978, he co-authored with Marilyn Bates, Please Understand Me, which introduced temperament theory to a much wider audience. He made it more accessible. The book contained the Geary Temperament Sorter, a self-report instrument designed to help people discover their temperament. And in his book, he named the four temperaments: Prometheans, Epimetheans, Apollinarians, and Dionysians. And I am sorry if I butchered those names. And then in 1998, he came out with his second book, Please Understand Me Too, which described the temperaments in more depth and the nature of each of the four temperaments. And he changed the names he was using to rational, guardian, artisan, and idealist. In this work, he described the correlation between the four temperaments and the work of Myers-Briggs. Using the letter description, he found the following correlations. The rationals, he said, correlated to the NTs, the guardians to the SJs, the artisans to the SPs, and the idealists to the NFs. So while these are two different typologies, and they do have their own distinct basis for exploring personality, Geary did find the correlation between them. But it should be noted that temperament is not MBTI light. In 1978, Don Lowry, an educator, discovered Geary's work and immediately saw the value of it for his students. This inspired Lowry to develop True Colors in 1979. He was a lover of live theater and brought Geary's work to his students in a lively and entertaining format that made it fun to learn. He replaced the more abstract names used by Geary and his predecessors and replaced them with four colors. Those colors were green, gold, orange, and blue. He also simplified the language to describe the 4 temperaments and created a simple self-discovery process for people to use to discover and explore their own temperaments. I'm now going to pass you back to Susan, who's going to take us into the 21st century.
Yes, and you know, one of the great theorists has been Linda Behrens, who's I think at the conference somewhere today, and she actually completed her.
With us today.
Oh, good. Okay. And she studied under David Geary, and she founded the Temperament Research Institute in 1988, which was renamed to Interstrengths Associates in 2005, in order to really refine and extend and disseminate Geary's temperament theory. So in 2001, and this is such a fundamental book for people who work with temperaments, she wrote Understanding Yourself and Others, an introduction to temperament. And this really provided a detailed analysis of the 4 temperaments, such as core needs, values, talents, and behaviors. Now, she did initially keep temperaments names, rational, guardian, idealist, and artisan. But in 2007, she renamed the temperaments theorist, stabilizer, catalyst, and improviser. And she also defined our 3 cells, which we find so useful when we're teaching personality dimensions. The core self, which is our innate personality pattern, the developed self, which is what we have developed through and learned through our life experiences, and the contextual self, which is how we choose to behave in any particular context. So then we want to talk about personality dimensions. And over a period of 5 years, the model personality dimensions was developed by Career Life Skills Resources, a Canadian product, so we're so proud of it. And they hired Linda McKim initially to create it. So it was released in 2003. So personality dimensions still uses colors because it makes the temperament styles visual. You know, in all the stuff we do, we have blues and greens and golds and oranges, but also there is a descriptor which reflects an important aspect of each temperament. So the names that are used are inquiring green, organized gold, authentic blue, and resourceful orange. And we obviously know Career Life Skills very well, and Denise, who's the president. And what we really like is she really checked those words out with a lot of people just to see if they worked. And actually, it seems to work for pretty much everybody. And personality dimensions now operates in Canada, US, South America, Asia, Australia, Hong Kong, many places. So it really has spread quite a bit. So in the next slide, we'll look at what makes it unique.
Oops, sorry. What happened?
Looks like the end, I think.
No, what?
Ah, there it is.
Oh,
Oops.
there we go. What happened here? Yeah, there we go.
That's it. Thanks, Anne. So one of the things that Career Life Skills took a lot of time developing was a new temperament assessment tool that can be used in a paper-based format or online. They simplified the language in all components, but it's still, although simple and easy to understand, it still can be taken into, you know, we operate in business mostly. I worked with a group of judges and they love the language. So the language is right. Career Life Skills felt it was very important to the concept of introversion and extroversion. So that is used in personality dimensions, and everybody, once they've completed the assessment, knows whether they're an introvert or an extrovert. And what we think is a very important point is the introduction of the concept of the color spectrum and the notion of plaid. What we know and mean by that is that we're a blend of all the temperaments. And while we're generally most comfortable from our preferred temperament or 2 temperaments, we can use all of the temperaments to a greater or lesser extent. And we really emphasize that in personality dimensions. So to add the next piece, Anne will now compare some of the temperament tools with the Myers-Briggs.
Okay. I don't know why this slide suddenly started doing this, but my apologies. Okay, so just so for those of you who aren't familiar with temperament, or just want to make sure that you understand what your personality dimensions color would be. So if we look at from the MBTI perspective, those of you who are NTs would be inquiring greens. And from Linda Barron's work, those of you who are theorists would be inquiring greens. Those of you who are catalysts would be authentic blues. Same if you were an NF, you would be an authentic blue. The stabilizers would be organized golds, and that would be the SJs. And the improvisers are the resourceful oranges, and those would be the SPs. And what we'd like to do now is just to get an idea of how many of you we have in each color. So I'm going to ask Catherine to put up the poll again, and if we can just get an idea of how many of you fall into each color. Okay. So.
Okay, sorry, shall I end the polling? I think everybody, 23,
Yeah, I think
20, 24, or 25 have voted. Sorry, there's still a few coming in.
Okay, yeah, because we've
Okay.
got 34 in total.
Yeah, I'll end the polling now, and then the results will come up on the screen.
Okay, perfect. So we've got 14 blues, 2 golds, 2 oranges, and 7 greens.
Mm-hmm.
Great, which is great to see. So at least we have at least some of you from every color, which is nice. It doesn't always happen. And yeah, and we're actually going to be getting you into your light color groups later on in the session to do an activity. So you'll get to actually work with the people who are the same color as you, which is kind of nice. Okay, I think you can close the poll now, Catherine, if you haven't already.
Yes, I have.
Okay, great. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, sorry, I'm going to pass you back to Susan, who's going to tell you a little bit about our contribution to personality dimensions over the last while.
Yeah, so we have been lucky enough to be invited by Career Life Skills to do many things, and we've just so much appreciated that they've asked us to do this. So in 2010, because of our expertise in management, leadership, communication in business, we've always operated in organizations. Career Life Skills asked us to write a book that connected temperament to working in an organization. So what would it be like if you were a green leader or a blue leader? That's sort of some of the things that's covered. And that book was called Color Savvy, Helping You Achieve Success in Your Work Life. And it was a bestseller, so we're very lucky. In 2005, Career Life Skills said, okay, well, now we've got the book. Let's have a professional assessment that goes along with that. So we were asked to do that. And we were just into finishing the second book when Career Life Skills came back to us again and said, we want you to reorient things here. You know, there needs to be a huge focus on wellness right now. People are truly suffering through COVID. And so over the last, I think probably 2020, we were busy creating the PD Wellness Report. So the book got put on the shelf, but now it's come back again. And so not only will our book, Your Personality Unlocked, using living life to its fullest, will come out. And this looks at personality dimensions in all aspects of your life, in your life in general, parenting, conflict. So it's a bit broader than the last one. And we were asked to create a PD expanded profile report that will reflect that. So yeah, we've been plenty busy through COVID, as you can see. So if, Anne, you can go to the next slide. So here we are. We've been asked to develop a wellness report. We know a lot about personality dimensions, and we have taught and know a lot about wellness. So the question was, how do we put the two together? So we actually decided to start with the wellness wheel. And this is very simple. You've seen lots of wellness wheels, I'm sure. But this one just looks at 6 factors. There could be 9, there could be 10, but we decided to keep it straightforward and simple. And so if you see in our wellness wheel, it looks at 6 factors: physical, emotional, intellectual, social, spiritual, and work. And then we thought, okay, how can we connect it to temperament? So what we decided to do, as a matter of fact, we started on the blues. And so we took something like the blue, and we said for that temperament, let's look at each factor in relationship to blue. So what we came out with for each factor was, we started off, and let's pretend we're doing physical. The physical, so there was an introduction to physical, and then we talk about a blue's potential overall approach to wellness in that factor, including the strengths that maybe the blues might have. We then looked at how might introvert blues differ from extrovert blues, and we then said, what might some challenges be that blues have in this factor, and what might be some tips to overcome that? And as you can see, then we went through the other factors related to the temperament, and then we went on to the other temperaments. The goal really was that at the end of this, when somebody's gone through the report and maybe a workshop, they'll have a clear idea of their strengths and challenges related to wellness, and some probably temperament-based ideas on how to strengthen their wellness. So basically, for the rest of today, that's more, or the next 45 minutes or 40 minutes, we're going to take you through the wellness wheel, give you an opportunity to determine your level of wellness in each factor, and then we're going to relate it to temperament and give you an opportunity to work in temperament groups to identify a couple of wellness things in an assigned factor that you think your temperament would do well with in terms of wellness. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to start by defining wellness. So Anne, if you're happy to go to the next slide. Okay, so we took the World Health Organization of wellness, and we said it's a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely just the absence of disease or infirmity. It's about creating well-being in our lives by having a balance, and this balance is an important word. We really do believe that some temperaments might stack all their wellness in certain core factors, when in effect we know that people who manage wellness most kind of try to have something in each of the factors. So that balance is actually a very important word. So that's the beginning of this. Anne's now going to start to explaining the factors in our wheel in greater detail, and then we'll go into our first activity.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Yeah, Susan mentioned the wellness wheel, and the 6 factors are physical, intellectual, spiritual, work, emotional, and social. And I'm going to start off by giving you a little bit more on the physical factor. So from the physical factor perspective, physical wellness isn't just about your being physically fit or the food that you eat. It encompasses more than that. It's your exercise and proper nutrition, but it also limiting the use of harmful substances. It's your overall physical wellness. Then we have the intellectual factor. And intellectual wellness involves keeping our minds stimulated and engaged. And research has shown that if you do keep your mind stimulated and engaged, you're much less likely to suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia as you age. So it's really important to do this. And we found that people who maintain their intellectual wellness continue to learn and grow throughout their lives. And they do this in a number of different ways. It could be by taking courses. It could be by reading books. It could be using their creativity. It could even be learning a practical skill. And then we have our spiritual factor. And spiritual wellness isn't just about religion. Spiritual wellness focuses on how we can stay in tune with our spiritual selves. It's a personal journey. It is different for each of us. Some define their spiritual wellness through a specific religion or faith, which is wonderful if you do have that belief. Some do it by living according to their core purpose, living an ethical life, or living according to their values. And for some, it could be just as simple as enjoying the beauty of nature. I know myself, I'm not a religious person, but I do consider myself spiritual. And one of the ways I really like to connect with my spirituality is I live right on Lake Ontario, and I love to go down to the lake and just spend time looking at the water and being one with it, if that makes sense. So those are the first three factors. I'm now going to pass you back to Susan, who's going to take you through the rest of them.
Thanks, Anne. So the work factor. So we wanted to make sure it incorporated all types of work. So obviously paid work, but some people devote their life to volunteer work, and that still is work. And we thought about those who work in the home tirelessly. So we wanted to include that as well. And the many of us who are in some form of higher education, school or whatever, that still is work as well. So we defined work in its broadest sense that we could. And then we wanted it to encompass different aspects of work life. So we know that it is important, if you can, to have work that's interesting, fulfilling, and meaningful. And that if you're not in that place, to kind of try to search for work that would meet those needs. We know that in terms of wellness, it's very important that you have some work-life balance. Like if you're, we know many Ontarians right now who are working 12 or 16 hours a day. And that's not good for anybody. So is there any work-life balance for people? And we know that it's important to have effective work relationships. That might just be working effectively with others or having some friends, but that is definitely an important aspect of the work. So the next one is the emotional factor. And if you just pass to the
I know, I'm just I'm just trying to get there.
Okay, here's the emotional factor. And so that relates to how effectively we manage and deal with our emotions. Are we aware of our feelings and accept them as indicators of how we're experiencing life? Feelings give us really important information. And I, in my coaching practice, have been really interested when people say, oh, I don't know how I'm feeling. So it is important that we can identify our feelings for sure. And then, okay, we may have emotions, but can we manage them effectively? And another part of that is, are we resilient? Do we handle life's ups and downs and crises in a resilient way? And the last one is, can we develop intimate and loving relationships with those important core people in our lives? So that's the emotional factor. So the social wellness refers to how effectively we nurture the important people in our lives. It involves building and maintaining meaningful friendships. I think that's especially important through this time when so many of us have felt isolated. Have you kept your connection with those really important people? It also means nurturing the intimate relationships in our lives. I know some of us have been locked up at home with a partner and 2 or 3 children. So how are you managing to nurture the intimate relationships in your lives? And it also involves having the skills and confidence to behave appropriately in a variety of different social situations. So that's the social factor. So we'd like to give you an opportunity to complete the wellness wheel. So there was a wellness wheel as a handout. So hopefully some of you could just pull on that. If you have not, it would simply be a matter of taking a piece of paper, drawing a circle, and then dividing it up into segments, and then just obviously putting the headings in. So what we'd like you to do, and to be honest with yourself, because you're not going to share this at all, is look at how well you're managing your wellness through this period. And you can do that in a number of ways. Here on our example, people have just shaded in where they feel they're weak and strong. So as you can see, this person has identified that they're very high in the work and intellectual factor, but much lower in the spiritual and emotional factor. And if you don't like the shading in business, you could use percentages. Some people would like to put in 10% in that one, 90% in that one, or any other thing that makes sense of you. The key is that at the end of this, you can really say, wow, I'm really good in intellectual and work. Okay, yes, I've kept my social stuff up through this, but gee, I'm really not good in some of the other, I really need to develop more fully to have a balanced wheel. So why don't you take, I think we're going to give you 3 minutes, 4 minutes for this. Anne, where are we on our timing?
Yes, we're at 11:32, so probably just a couple of minutes for this one.
Okay, so just take a couple of minutes, either just using the handout or creating a wheel. And the idea is that you can assess where you're really strong and some areas that you may want to focus on more. All right, I know that wasn't enough time because this does require quite a bit of thought actually, but we at least wanted to give you an opportunity just to play with it a little bit. And we would love it. We have a couple of minutes if anybody would want to share any insights or any aha moments or any thoughts on the wellness wheel. And if you would like to, just unmute and start talking. And then I start begging, would anybody like to say anything?
It's given me insights into areas in my life where actually I need to pay rather more attention.
Okay, that's a very good insight. So thank you, Tim. Anybody else want to add anything?
Yes, I'd just like to, pardon me, to amplify Tim's comment that it does highlight where there needs to be a wee bit more attention.
Yeah.
There's only one area I hasten to add.
Oh, right. And I think so many people find that when they do it, that it our strengths in wellness, we've probably done lots of. It's the areas which maybe we don't like quite as much, and that or through this period of time, we just haven't been able to do them. Anybody else want to share anything before we move on? Well, and as Mark said, just attending the conference helps the intellectual factor for sure. Any last comment or insight on this? Oh, and
I would like to say it's a great way of look at the balance for different areas, important areas.
And the balance is so important. I had a friend who was a really, elite athlete, and so much was in that physical area. And then, of course, they had damage and they couldn't do it anymore. And they really had to work to build up in their other areas. So the balance is actually very important. So thank you so much for that comment. So that's the first thing that people would do, is just really work on, where am I weak, where am I strong in terms of this wellness wheel, and then we connect it to the temperaments. So Anne is going to do a little bit of work in that area.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Yeah, as Susan mentioned, we are going to connect them. Now that we have an idea of our own wellness, we're going to talk about what role do the temperaments play in this. So as we know, we're each made up of all 4 temperaments, but we do usually have 1 or 2 temperaments that are our predominant or our preferred ways of doing things. So when we look at each of our wellness factors, the way we would enhance our wellness in a specific factor is impacted by our predominant color. For example, if we look at the intellectual factor, the authentic blues, who are all about self-actualization, they'll usually focus on the areas of self-improvement or finding ways to help other people. The inquiring greens, who love learning, and it's a lifelong journey for them, but they'll look for, they may embrace it in different ways. They may be looking at things like having a stimulating debate with somebody about something, or doing research in an area that they find interesting. The organized goals, they do many things to keep their minds stimulated, but really they do enjoy putting their planning, organizing, and decision-making skills to good use. And they also have such attention to detail. Whether it be at work or at home, they really like to keep everything running smoothly. And last but certainly not least, we have our resourceful oranges, and they are keen learners, but they approach it from a little bit differently perspective than some of the others. They're all about, let me do it, let me try it out, let me learn a new skill, and then I'll adapt it to what I want it to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to test your knowledge a little bit. And Catherine, this is where the polls are going to come up. So if we can do the first one, please. Okay, so looking at the physical factor, what color do you think would prefer going for a walk with a friend, based on what we've talked about so far? Okay. Yeah, and if you maybe want to put the results up, Catherine.
Okay.
Yeah, so as you can see, most of you came up with authentic blues, and that's probably the one I would have chosen, because as we know, the authentic blue, or the NT, they're all about the NFs, they're all about relationships. It's having that connection with other people. So yeah, they're probably going to enjoy going for a walk with a friend, but that doesn't mean that the other colors wouldn't enjoy it as well. I mean, the organized gold, well, it's out getting active, doing something, that and being with people. The organized goals like to be part of a community. So that's where that probably came from. The resourceful oranges, as I said, it's about being active. They like to be active. And the inquiring greens, if they could be having a good discussion with that friend, they'd probably enjoy it as well. Okay, can we move on to the next poll?
Yeah, just getting there. So poll
Yeah,
number
no, that's fine. Take your
4.
time.
That's all right. Poll number 4 coming up now, I think.
Okay.
There you go.
So looking at from the perspective of the work factor, what color would most like the workplace to be as drama-free as possible? Okay. Yeah, we can put up the results at this point.
Okay, yeah, we've got 18 out of 24
Yeah.
have voted. Mhm.
I'm gonna assume that's we've got quorum anyways.
Yeah.
This one probably most for the inquiring greens. They're all about, they don't like the emotional side of things. So for them, having a drama-free workplace is going to be the most comfortable. Now, some of you also said the organized goals. And again, that's probably coming from the fact that they do like the community. And so they don't want to have friction within the workplace. And the authentic blues the same way. As we know, authentic blues hate conflict. They'll actually go out of their way to avoid conflict. So again, for them, they probably would prefer to have a drama-free workplace. Okay, can we put up the next poll, please, Catherine?
Yeah. There we go. That should be appearing.
Yeah, there we go. Now looking from a spiritual factor, what color may be most comfortable sticking with the religion they grew up with? Yeah, it looks as though the organized goals are getting it hands down. And yeah, that's the one I would be saying. And that one's really from the perspective of they are very traditional. They do draw on the past. They're most comfortable with traditions and things like that. So they are going to be most comfortable with sticking with the religion that they did grow up with. Now, somebody said the authentic blues, and that could be too. I mean, the authentic blues, if that's where they're comfortable, that's great. But probably this one I would have probably answered the organized goals particularly, which is what most of you answered. Okay, and can we do our last poll, please? Okay, looking at the emotional factor. When aggravated, which color will generally use their excellent in-the-moment problem-solving and troubleshooting skills to work through the situation? Okay, I think we're pretty good here. Yeah, so most of you said the resourceful orange, and yeah, as we know, they are the problem solvers, the troubleshooters. They love to really get in and solve those problems in the moment. Now, the organized goals, though, again, they'd like to have a community. They like things to be running smoothly, so they could be doing it. And the inquiring greens might take a very sort of technical perspective, and they are very good problem solvers. And they probably wouldn't bring any emotion into that solving that problem. So yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. And I think you can close the polls now.
Okay, I have closed it, so
Oh, okay, sorry.
you might need to just click close on your
Close
screen.
it on our own screens. Great, thank you. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're actually going to take you into an activity. We're going to put you into your light color groups. And I'm going to get Catherine to explain this in a moment, how this is going to work. But what we're going to do is we're going to assign each factor, each color one of the factors. And I'm going to ask you in your light color groups to come up with, say, 2 ways that you think you could enhance your wellness in that factor based on your color. Because as we've been talking about, depending on your color, it might depend on what you would do to enhance that factor. And that's what we saw in the polls that we just did. So those of you who are in inquiring greens, we're going to give you the emotional factor, and we're going to ask you to come up with 2 ways you think you can improve your wellness. Now, think about it truly from an inquiring green perspective. So try not to let your other colors bleed through when you're answering this. And so basically it should be a situation where you all agree upon the 2 things that you come up with. The blue group, we're going to give you the intellectual factor. And I think we might actually end up having 2 blue groups. The orange group, we're going to have the spiritual factor. And the gold group are going to have the physical factor. Okay, so we're going to put you into your breakout rooms. And as I say, I'm going to let Catherine explain how that's going to work.
Sorry, right, I've just unmuted myself.
That's okay.
Right. Now something's just disappeared from my screen, but I hope you should be able to see options to join different rooms. Just tell me, can you see that or not? If somebody could...
So at the bottom of the screen under breakout rooms.
Okay, so there should be options there that give you the choice of joining an SJ, an SP, an NT, or an ENF or an INF group.
Okay, and we're going to give you about 5 minutes in your groups.
You might need to hover. Oh, I can see some people are going.
Yeah, people are going, which is great.
Yeah. So if you can't find where it is, you might need to hover. Hi, David.
Excuse me, Catherine, could you put me into the NT group?
Yeah.
The same happened yesterday.
Yeah, done
Thank
that.
you.
So if anybody can't see the option or can't get into the group, just...
Same thing happened to me, Catherine, Judy McLaren.
Yeah.
SP. Same as yesterday.
Sorry, SP, Judy, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Got it.
Can you see the groups as well?
I can't see groups.
I'll just find you, Kai. I'm just sending you to the ENF group. So people are getting into groups. So if you're not in a group, just unmute yourself and speak, and I will assign you.
I am not in a group. I have ENFP.
Hi, Claire. Right, I will assign you to ENF group. Jim
Yeah,
Peake, I'm
ENF.
about to assign you to INF. Right, I've just done that, Jim, so you should go. Joss
Got it.
Leach, I'm assigning you to INF.
Thank you.
Matthew Archer, INF. Jakob, ENF.
Perfect. Thank you.
Ashna, oh, Ashna, I don't know your type, so if you could unmute and tell me your
Yes,
type.
mine is INF as well.
Okay,
The green group, yeah.
okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Great, so I think everybody has now gone to rooms. I'll stop, I should have stopped the recording. There we are, I've stopped it now.
Okay, great. One person from each group, just share one thing that you could do. So the green group, from an emotional factor perspective, what's one thing you could do to enhance your emotional factor?
That was us, wasn't it? So we discussed lots of stuff, not most of which wasn't actually considered of a task. But one of the things we said was some activity to induce a state akin to mindfulness in ourselves. And I choose my words carefully because two people really like meditation. The other two people didn't. One person really hated mindfulness exercises, but two people really like going for walking nature. So it was something, actually I think three people did.
Yeah.
So it was something to induce that state in yourself, although not necessarily the techniques which people advertise as doing so. Is that
So
fair?
from a green perspective, when it comes to that, it might be a little different, certainly, than what it would look like, what mindfulness would look like for, say, a blue or a gold or an orange. So yeah, that's a very good one. Thank you.
And thank you, Catherine. That sounds very good.
Yeah.
Yes, it
So,
was.
Or a really nice beer, take as long as possible.
yeah. Sorry to kind of rush you through this, but I know I'm trying to be as cognitive of time as I possibly can be. The blue group, you had the intellectual factor. What's one thing you could do from an intellectual perspective to enhance that factor? I know we had we had an INF group and an ENF group. So why don't we start with the INF group?
This is Jane Kesey. We talked quite a bit about how we use extroverted sensing to fuel up to do the intellectual work. And we'd had different experiences with the intellectual side during COVID, whether all the opportunities were overwhelming or fulfilling, or whether we needed something lighter than we might normally do. But SE was definitely giving us the balance that we needed.
Okay. Great. Yeah. And that's the trick, is finding that balance through all of this. So very important. Thank you. How about our ENFs? What did you come up with as just one of your ideas?
Attending APTI conferences.
Okay. Yeah. There you go.
We're just taking courses and learning that way,
Yeah.
Intentionally taking classes.
Yeah. So, as an ENF, you probably would like to be, as you mentioned, courses or the conference, you like to be doing it with other people. Where as an INF, I'm probably quite happy doing it more like this, where I'm kind of not as out there in the world as the extroverts like to be. Okay, great. Thank you. And how about our orange group? I know we only had one orange person, and you had the spiritual factor. So what's one thing you could do to improve your spiritual factor?
It was finding a way, very simply, most of the time, the easiest thing to do is walk outside, take a deep breath, and look around, which just engages the SE.
Yeah.
I put other ideas in this chat really quick. I actually found moving meditation was easier than sitting meditation.
Yeah, and as an orange, that's very important to you. You need to be active. Just sitting and trying to meditate probably doesn't work well for an orange.
Can do it now, but
but it's something you'd really have to work at, as opposed to it coming to you naturally. You'd really have to tap into your other colors.
Yeah, and martial arts. I've studied two different martial arts in life, and those both have a spiritual component.
Yeah, they would definitely. Okay, that's great. Thanks, Judy. And finally, our organized goals. You had the physical factor. So what's one thing you could do to improve your physical factor?
It wasn't so much a case of what we could do, it's what we did do.
Okay.
I, for one, do stretches in the morning. It's one way of sort of keeping the body going.
Mm-hmm.
What we agreed on, we were both happier with tools in our hands than with books.
Mm.
So we restore stuff. We do useful things.
Okay.
And I think in engaging in that, there's a physical element to that.
Yeah, definitely.
It keeps us going.
Keeps you going. And actually that leads into a really good point, that it engages you physically, but it also engages your mind. So these factors are all very much interwoven. So when you do something to enhance one factor, you can actually end up enhancing multiple factors. So, think about that when you're thinking about ways you can improve the factors and the ones that you need to maybe work on a little bit. So we've just given you a little bit of a taste of how this works. There is a lot more depth to it, but unfortunately we only had an hour with you. So I'm going to pass you back to Susan, who's going to wrap us up for today.
Well, I was just going to say, it really does remind me that wellness is such a unique journey, and that you have to truly work out what works for you in each of those 6 factors. Mm-hmm. I know we have we can go a little bit over the hour. So does anybody have any questions?
You're welcome to reach out to us privately if you do have questions. We've given you our email address, and we're happy to, if something comes up. Oh, David.
Yes, David. Question.
Thank you very much. Pardon me. That was very interesting. Are you both familiar with Lisa Mosconi's book on brain food and the research she's done into dementia prevention, which is based on the blue zones around the world, where dementia is almost unheard of, because it maps directly onto the wheel that you used. And I know that you mentioned that there were several wellness wheels.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I can strongly recommend that, because it's not just about nutrition, and it covers all of the facets on the wheel that you used.
Great. We'll definitely look into that. Thank you.
An excellent one. And I mean, there is so much out by the brain now. It fascinates me that we can connect the brain and how it works with our wellness and so many other things. So thank you for that. Does anybody else have a comment or a question? Because that was a great comment.
Yeah.
Anybody?
I've got a question, actually, Susan or Anne, which is just, are you offering a free report? Did you?
Yes.
We are. Yes.
Yes. So yes, if you would like to fill out the free PD wellness report, we'd love to do it with you. And one of us will debrief it with you so that you, and actually this was the funny thing we didn't know. We've been putting all kinds of groups through our Train the Trainer for Wellness. And we never thought that they're actually saying, we're on this for us, and not just for what we can teach to others. So we'd be very happy for you to fill it out, and for then one of us to debrief it with you. And all you have to do is actually contact us at info@upyourpotential.com, and then we'll get in touch with you, and you can see what the wellness report looks like. We are getting great feedback, because we must have put, I don't know, 75 people, I'm not exactly sure of the numbers, PD facilitators through, and they've all gone, this is good. And I believe if you are is it a level 2, if you teach, if you are
Where are you going?
Myers-Briggs trained, then you can use these tools. So it might be just something to add to your box of tools that you have. So
yeah, we actually do have like bridging programs to explain how to go from Myers-Briggs or other temperament tools to actually use personality dimensions.
So yes, we're offering it to anybody who would like to do it. It's kind of fun actually, and the debrief is, we enjoy doing that as well. So that would be fun if you'd like to see what was there. And is Catherine asking a question? No, she's just saying that's a good thing. So other than that, if there is any last question, we'd be happy to do it. If not, we'll close it down. So does anybody want to make any last comment or question? All right, so I guess I'm going to say thank you so much for attending. And you know, we're all either facilitators or coaches, I'm sure. I learn as much from my students as they learn from me. So thank you, David. We'll both get that book. Yeah, thank you very much.
Definitely. And thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, over to you,
enjoyed
Catherine.
meeting.
Great. Well,